Hey all, what's up? Avi.Turner here. Tonight I got a very good video, part 2 to my part 5 series, Black Representation in Aviation. Last night we did the history of black African Americans in aviation. Now tonight we're going to be doing what representation actually means and why there should be more black representation in aviation. Tonight's going to be pretty chill, but of course I need y'all like this up, subscribe, turn on post notifications, send this to everyone you know, and always have a nice time and learn something. Just enjoy. All right, let's get it. All right, when we're waking up the day before the flight, or hours before the flight, usually you're pretty tired. Dad yelling, he tripping. He wants you to get in the car as fast as possible. You live probably like in Philly or Wilmington. Like the airport is not even that far away, and he's tripping like, "Oh man, we gotta go. Come on, we gotta get there, bro." Flight leaving like 5 hours. All right, you're sleepy, hungry, you're thirsty. Pop's mad. He don't care. He trying to get to the flight as fast as possible. So like, already your mind is not focused on the pilot. Already it's not focused on the pilot. You get the TSA, they mad. They already mad. They're like, "Oh, come on, bro. Come on, take them shoes off." They don't care. They really don't care. They so serious about their job. You wondering if you have something that's not supposed to be in your book bag or the luggage. Then you remember, did I really leave that suitcase home? Now you tripping because that was your mom's suitcase, or it was a suitcase that has something very important in it. But thank God it's there. So you just like you already over it. You like, man, I don't even want to go on this trip no more. So you catch up on some sleep in the waiting area. Flight leaving, like it's still like 3 hours left. It's still 3 hours left because you were so close. You're so close to the airport. Like it didn't take you that long. It took you like 30 minutes to get there. So the flight leaves in like 3 hours. You're sleepy. You're slumped. You don't care about nothing at this point. But what I'm trying to get at is we don't normally focus on who's actually flying the plane, even if that is probably the most important thing because they're the one taking you from point A to B. Okay? It's like, would you rather have an idiot or a professional? Of course, we're going to take the professional. But as far as being behind that cockpit, that is one of the most influential roles in transportation today. And who gets to sit in there still matters more than people realize because aviation is not just about flying aircraft. It's about access, visibility, and opportunity. And right now, representation in aviation is still catching up to the world it serves. All right, part 1. What does representation actually look like and what does it mean? Okay? Representation isn't just about optics or checking boxes. It's about something more practical. Who sees a career and thinks, that could be me? Okay. As far as that, we see the kid that loves basketball, all right? He knows all of the history, he knows all the players, he knows all the teams. He's always looking at the stats. He's always studying ball. When he sees a player he likes on TV, take LeBron for example, he says, that could be me. He thinks that could be me. We take the doctor. His father is a doctor. His mom is a nurse. We look at him and see all the money his parents are bringing in, all the money that all the people that his parents are saving. He looks at them and says, that could be me. He thinks that could be me. Rarely do we see pilots or people that have parents that are pilots. Because already, if you're a pilot, you're not going to be home all the time, okay? So it's really hard to raise a family. It's very, very hard to have children because you're not going to be home to see your kids age, grow, and just be there in general. You're going to miss everything from birthdays to even Christmas. That's how serious piloting gets. So that's where that gap comes into play, and that's where that lack of knowledge comes because your parents didn't do that. And really, Your pops, and even if your parents did do that, they're not even home. They're too busy. So what I'm trying to say is there should be that representation from the get go. Furthermore, especially in these people of color communities, they barely have any representation, especially African Americans. Because normally, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm gonna be so for real, I'm gonna be completely transparent. As you know, I am a person of color, I am black. Normally in our communities, we normally don't talk about aviation, okay? It's normally, oh yeah, you gotta be the basketball player, you gotta be the NFL player, even the like MLB player. Normally, it's not anything like aviation centric. All right, it's always the sports player, the entertainer, the rapper, and I'm being so for real. I will be transparent about that. It is normally that type of stuff, but you got to also think about these areas and these communities already they are missing out on so much because they don't and are not given the same opportunities as preferably, I will say this, white children. And that is real. That is a real thing that is happening in real life. Because with already the lack of opportunities that they are given and the circumstances that they are in, how are they going to have the knowledge to know about something like aviation and understand the history? Because already they're in survival mode. They don't have time to be worrying about flying and stuff like that. They don't have time, and they really don't have money because already it's expensive. That's already a bad thing right there. It is way too expensive to learn how to fly privately, and it's way too expensive for some people that don't have necessarily the opportunities to have scholarships. And quite frankly, there's not that many scholarships that exist as a diversity quota. There is not enough scholarships that exist for impoverished African American children, which is already a very big problem. Why isn't there more opportunities for people like me to want to do aviation if there is nothing like, there isn't money that's going to be given to them, because not everybody can afford those flying fees. And really, not a lot of HBCUs teach it. Of course, you got DSU. That's probably like the best. That's probably like the best and really the only school you can really go to. But like, I'll be so for real. I'm HBCU first. I mean, I feel like you can get a better education at a HBCU if I'm talking about on behalf of like African Americans. I feel like you will have a better experience because you are in front of and near people like you, and it would be just cheaper. I mean, it's easier. It's way easier to get a scholarship. But these programs aren't. They don't exist. Okay, and it makes it entirely impossible to want to be pilots because, as I previously mentioned, the lack of knowledge, the lack of opportunities, money. That's a huge thing. And once you finally get there, this is the most important thing. There are not any, or there is a lack of people like you and me. There is not. I can't even name. It is so bad. I can't even name 5 black pilots on my hand, unless I'm talking about DSU. I can't. Outside of school, I can't. I can name like 2. I can name 2 black pilots. That's horrible. That's horrible. As far as history, I can name like 4. I can name like 5. I've named pretty much all of them last night. That's crazy. If you're excluding groups, if you're excluding the Tuskegee Airmen, I named like 5, and that's pretty much it. And some of those were astronauts. That's like 3 people. I named like three. Really, like two, because the other dude, I mean, he wasn't as influential as the other two. I'm being so for real. But with representation, if you don't see people in those pipelines early on, the career can feel distant and especially unreachable. Because you don't see people like you there. You look back in history, there's barely anybody there, too. There's like 3, 5 people. So it's like, why even try? Because obviously something isn't right, right? There's obviously some type of ceiling adversity. There's obviously something else going on that doesn't make any sense. That there's a reason why people like me and you aren't there. And it turns into maybe not me into why not me. The reason why is because we have that representation. We start building opportunities. We start giving out scholarships. We start giving people money. With money, we can make these people want to do this. Because with cost, so much stuff is limited. People are already struggling, man. Look at this gas. Look at this gas. We're already struggling. Food, gas, heat, air conditioning. That's not cheap. School already expensive enough. And then you put on top of that flight, private private flight. Dude, already enough. You have to get a license. You have to get a license. They're not just gonna hire you off of like, college. You have to get it. And that license can go up towards $900 to over $1,000. That's the reality of aviation. But if we start giving these opportunities and we start giving these people a platform, they will finally be given an outlet to want to fly and to want to get into the history and innovate. Now, I'm going to talk about the current landscape. This it's rough. I'll say it's just rough. It's very rough. Because already there's a pilot shortage, and people don't want to fly in the Air Force. Which, I mean, if you want to do the military and stuff like that, that's crazy. There's more Marines than there are Air Force, which that says something. Today, commercial aviation is more diverse than it has ever been. And that does not say a lot. That does not say a lot. Of course, it is definitely more diverse than it was in the later years. But trust me, if you look at statistics, black pilots are still unrepresented in major airlines and flight programs relative to their share of the population. And that will include Alaskan Airlines. I bet you, I don't think there's ever been I'm sorry. I don't think in the history of Alaskan Airlines there has ever been a black pilot. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I'm just speaking into the air. I don't think there's ever been a black pilot. Look at Delta and Alpha. That's just where it's like getting struck by lightning. I don't even think like. I think that is so rare to see that. Let's see, Hawaiian Airlines. I don't think there's ever been a single black pilot for Hawaiian Airlines. I'm not being ignorant. I'm just saying it's just. I don't think so. Spirit. I fly Spirit. I'll say that. Yeah, I guess I'll say that Spirit in Southwest. That's probably few people. That's a few airlines I would say that you would see a black pilot. Actually, I'm gonna say, yeah, Delta, definitely, because I do know an actual black pilot for Delta. I did talk to him a little bit earlier before this video. That's all I had to say. But this doesn't come down to talent, which had never been a talent thing in the first place, especially in history. It was always a lack of opportunity. It was especially the racism. Because racism is still crazy. Racism is still crazy, and like, of course, racism is still rampant today. But in aviation, it's still crazy. I'm so for real, because it's that lack of diversity. I mean, you'll probably see, if you're not in DSU, you walk into an aviation class, man. There's probably like one or two black dudes. It's even less for black women. Sadly, it's even less for black women. But it comes down to the access points. As previously mentioned, that cost of flying, it's too high. I understand how expensive plane fuel and jet fuel is. I understand how expensive of course, how expensive aircraft is, but it is too crazy. It is too crazy. People do not have, without legacy, people do not have this money. And of course, you could just do it yourself, but I think it's actually way more expensive to do that, because you have to maintain the plane, you got to pay for the fuel, you got to make sure everything is okay. Also, you have to license the vehicle. It's just like with a car. You have to license it. You can't just fly it. And that's a whole different world. That's a whole different can of worms. And then, of course, the lack of early exposure in schools. And that is probably the worst one. That is the worst one of all. That. Because already that cancels out everything. They don't even know what, when you think, they don't even probably know what the word aviation means. When you think like flying, you think a pilot. Aviation, they don't even think it's the correct terminology. Limited mentorship pipelines, I will include scholarships like I previously mentioned, and then fewer visible role models in aviation media. That's a big one too, because normally on TV normally on the news and stuff like that, it's all so negative. The news is also negative, but we don't normally get aviation stories like that. And when it's aviation, it's more aeronautics. They're talking about astronauts, not just straight up aviation. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's that exposure I'm talking about. Being that not everybody wants to be an astronaut. There are going to be a lot of people that want to be pilots. But how are they going to know what to do if there's no exposure in media, and more importantly, there's no exposure in schools? And then already the history is not being taught, because I bet you most of these people aren't going to know who Bessie Coleman was, or sadly, the Tuskegee Airmen, because there's no knowledge. I don't know what that is. I was never taught that in school. But why does this matter? Because with pipeline growth, people see pilots who look like them, the interest automatically increases. That directly expands the talent pool. Safety culture. Aviation relies on communication, teamwork, and trust. Diverse teams bring different perspectives that strengthen decision making. Industry stability. The aviation industry is facing long-term pilot shortages in every region. It is hitting the aviation world the worst. There's too many planes, and there's not enough people to fly it, because there's already that lack of knowledge. And if we bring this into low-end communities and communities with, especially with African American pilots, we can help with the shortage problem, and already these are some exponential minds. They're already smart. They're already smart. But you don't give them these opportunities, and you don't give them this outlet, and then wonder why is there a shortage? Because they don't know. There's probably so many people that want to be pilots that don't have the legacy, that sadly don't have the money, and we don't even know because they notice it's a money problem. It's a, I'll say it, it's a race problem because they don't see people like them. Why am I gonna do this? Because already they don't want me there. 2, I don't got the money. 3, I'm not given the opportunity to even do this. And then with that, we just gotta inspire. We always have to inspire. There is always room for change. And with that comes inspiration. One pilot can change thousands of career paths just by being visible. If they see somebody like them, if they hear somebody just like them, they know it's possible. They know they can do it. Sometimes the biggest impact isn't in the cockpit. Of course, sometimes it's not in there. It's a kid watching the plane take off from the ground. That's all it can take. But I rambled a little bit tonight. We're going to get to the outro. Cockpit is more than a workplace. It's a symbol of trust, skill, and global connection. And the more people who can see themselves in that seat, the stronger the aviation becomes. Not just as an industry, but as a shared human system. As always, support your local black pilot. Please, 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 please tell your people about this. I'm going to be making a video later tonight, hopefully. And if not, I'll probably upload like 2 more tomorrow. But rambled a little bit tonight. But it's very important to me, man. I really want to see aviation grow because it's something I want to do in the future. I've always wanted to fly ever since I was a kid. I always wanted to go to space. And I just feel like as a community, as, being African American, I really just feel like, I've been thinking about this for a while, for years. I just feel like, we just don't highlight we highlight few avenues that we can make money and we can improve. Of course, we need more inventors. We need more doctors. We need more pilots. But I just really feel like, there's a lot of us that have that skill. That's just not being able to be tapped into. And there's a lot of us that want to do that, but are not given the opportunity. And I feel like we just need to come together. We need people, of course, the few people that have done that, to just, teach the younger generation and really just fix this industry. Because piloting is still going to be a thing. But it won't be if we don't have, diversity. And, of course, we don't have enough. That's all I got to say. But, of course, I talk a little bit too much tonight. But please make sure to tap into my next vid. And, as always, support your local black pilot. See y'all tomorrow or tonight.